Good evening, everyone. I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, first thing tonight, let's deal with the new Zoom settings on chat, which are a total pain in the ass. D, unmute and take it away.
Yeah, I apologize. So if you go into the chat, you have to go into new chat and type Billy's name in order for his name to come out. You can't chat anybody else, but you can chat Billy's name under new chat in order to chat. Otherwise, it looks like it's disabled because it is, but they have a new layout in Zoom, the way that they changed it. It's terrible. It's weird, but that's the only way to chat Billy.
Yeah. Sounds like they did not ask the end users, but it is what it is. Just a quick schedule of and a flyer will be out very soon, but the dates are for sure are July. Let me just take a look at this so I am right when I say it. After tonight, the next meeting will be July 14th. And that will be appointed committee members and non-trustee directors. What do they do and how are they selected? This will be posted very soon. July 21st will be the General Service Board Reserve Fund. How does it work? How is it invested? How is it funded? What is it used for? And how is it different than an endowment? And then starting on the 28th of July will be like the welcome to service, legacy of service, whatever they call it now in the service manual. And then the following week, the 4th will be chapter 1 of the service manual. But that will all be posted very soon. Tonight, we are finishing the warranties, which I'm just going to, a brief reminder for the tape, that these existed before the concepts. They existed from when the conference charter came out. They are Article 12 of the conference charter. And they can't be changed without 75% of the group's permission in writing, like the traditions and the steps. And this was protected even before the concepts were protected. That's how important the warranties are. I would tell you, just to finish off on warranty 2, which we went into depth last week, if you are talking about the 7th tradition, it is impossible not to mention warranty 2. Warranty 2 is all about expanding the 7th tradition definition. So tonight, we will start on warranty 3, which says none of the conference members shall be placed in a position of unqualified authority over any others. So let's just divide that first by who are the conference members. I'm going to use 135 because it's easy math. Sometimes it's 137, sometimes 136. But the conference voting members are the 93 area delegates, the 21 or 22 trustee delegates, the 6 non-trustee director delegates, and the 15 or so staff delegates. I call them all delegates because the bylaws of the General Service Board make clear that every voting member is a delegate. Now, when we say delegate in our normal language, we mean like delegates versus everyone else. Delegates in the boards or delegates in the boards and staff, but it's better to look at it that everybody, like the bylaws say, is an equal delegate. That week at the conference, their job is to be equal, regardless of what their name tag says. Some people may give reports at the conference. The board chair, the board treasurer, all the board chairs, AWS, Grapevine, General Service Board, the General Service Board treasurer. Usually the trustees at large give an international presentation. And sometimes during the week, depending on the schedule, there are certain workshops that are presented. But Everybody's an equal, regardless if they're presenting at the conference or not. They have an equal vote. So those are the conference members. And it goes on to say, we have learned that this principle is of incalculable value to the harmonious conduct of our conference affairs. In its application in our structure has already been extensively discussed under the concept entitled the right of participation, which emphasizes that our world servants, both as individuals and as groups, shall be entitled to voting rights in reasonable proportion to their responsibilities. So again, it's going back to another concept. So if we went back to concept 4, the right of participation, and again, that super important line, in reasonable proportion to their several responsibilities. So all 135 people are equal as voters, equal voters. And we don't have caucuses, we don't have parties. Even though we have regions, we don't have regional voting blocks. We shouldn't have any of that. So what is the reasonable proportion? It's kind of like a review of concept 4. If there are 93 out of 135 area delegates, the reasonable proportion is that the area delegates who are representing the groups get the most say, over 66%. They have the biggest responsibility. Next is the trustees. After that, the staff. After that, the directors. So as individuals, they're equal, but as groups of positions, they are not equal. There's 4 different kind of voters: area delegate, trustee delegate, non-trustee director delegate, and staff delegate. They're all equal. But the groups have more say than everyone else. And the trustees have more say than the directors or the staff. It then goes on to say, because this right of participation is so important, we have made it the subject of this warranty, thus providing the insurance that conference action can never alone overturn or amend this right. For any purpose, widespread group consent would be needed, which would be proved difficult through not necessarily impossible for the conference to obtain. We believe that our whole service experience fully justifies the taking of this strong stand against the creation of unqualified authority at any point in our conference structure. It should be noted too that this warranty against absolute authority is far more general and sweeping in its nature than a general guarantee of voting participation. It really means that we of AA will not tolerate absolute human authority in any form. The voting rights urged under our concept of participation are simply the practical means of checking any future tendency to an unqualified authority of any sort. This actually happened a couple of years ago at the conference, so it's a good example. Let's just say it happened in the last 7 years. But a conference committee presented a recommendation to the conference floor. The chair, let's talk about that a second. There are 3, the only proper use of the word co in all of AA service is at the General Service Conference. Because there are 3 voting members who are co-chairs for the week. It is usually the general manager, the chair of the General Service Board, and the delegate chair, the area delegate chair. So, in the last 7 years, a committee made a recommendation, and the chair, who was chairing at the time, called that committee recommendation out of order. That is very unusual. A committee should have the ability to bring a recommendation forward and let the body decide, but the chair ruled it out of order and then wouldn't allow debate on it. Now, the good news here is that next year the chair apologized at the start of the conference. And it was also reaffirmed, and this is a good thing for anybody at an area or an in a group or anything. And now I've been chairs of tons of AA committees. I am not anti-chair. I want the chair to have wide latitude to make decisions and keep the meeting moving. But in the rare occurrence that somebody thinks the chair made a grave mistake, then any voting member of that body should be able to make a motion to reverse the chair's decision. In other words, no human being in Alcoholics Anonymous should ever be an unqualified, unchecked authority. Sure, in 99% of the time, does the chair say that's out of order, this is out of order, we're doing this? Yes. And we should elect good chair people. But if the chair makes a catastrophic mistake or one that just seems unfair, any voting member should be able to make a motion at the floor. And I would tell you, if you were told this is not okay, I would say, well, this is what they do at the General Service Conference. That doesn't mean they're going to let you do it. But I'm just telling you, this was reaffirmed so that if that happened again, somebody would get up and say, Mr. or Mrs. Chair, I make a motion to reverse your decision. And if it was seconded, then it could go to discussion and vote, just to make sure that there is no unqualified human authority. Now, the other thing we have to be careful of is that no person become more important than others who's a voting member. Now, there's big debate about this regarding the conference agenda because the trustees set the agenda. Trustee committees forward things to the conference to put on their agenda, and the trustees conference committee sets the agenda. This has been this way since the early 70s. Before that, the delegates had a lot of input in the agenda. There are ways the delegates participate now, though. There are conference calls after the January board meeting to let the delegates give feedback about something that should or shouldn't be on the agenda to the trustee chair of their corresponding trustee committee. And, you know, the job of the trustees, and this is, I think, where in current day AA, we see people debating a little. I have been a member of a trustees committee that decides whether something should go to conference or not. I've also been a member of the conference committee on the trustees committee on the conference, which deals with the ones that no one knows where they go. And I've also been chair of the trustees conference committee. When an agenda item is sent in, the role of the trustees or a trustee committee is really to simply decide, is it something the conference needs to deal with? Because it might be something that the conference doesn't need to deal with. It might be service material. We don't need a conference action to change service material. A trustees committee or a corporate board could do that. It might be something that doesn't rise to the level of policy. I know people send me agenda items all the time, and I'm like, you know, what you wrote is very nice, but you don't need to make it an agenda item. Send it to the AWS board or the AA Grapevine board, or send it to the conference, to the trustees corrections committee. The only thing the conference needs to vote on is things that require conference approval. What the trustees are not supposed to do is weigh the merits of that item. So in other words, somebody sends in an item and I'm on that trustees committee and I don't like it, which is possible. And so instead of me thinking, does this go to the conference or not? I'm like, well, maybe I should roadblock it. Now I can tell you, I never saw that. I hear complaints today that may be happening. That's not my experience as a trustee. My job was to decide, is this something the conference should deal with? Not decide the merits of the agenda item that was sent in. Staff puts together the background material. They're supposed to put all relevant background material regarding that agenda item together. Some people think that that's too much power for the staff. I would tell you that if you're on a conference committee as a delegate and you receive background material that you thought was incomplete, that something important was missing, then there is a process. You can go to your delegate chair and ask them to go to your trustee committee chair and say, hey, there's something important from the background that's missing. Or if you felt the background looks one-sided, the background is supposed to be fair. It's supposed to spell out just the good, the bad, and the ugly of whatever we're talking about. And usually what we're talking about is past minutes of committees or boards that have dealt with that subject. Because as you've probably noticed, if you've looked at our conference agendas, we repeat ourselves a lot. In fact, we make a decision and 3 years later, we want to make a new decision. Or we don't like that the decision that was made, so we try to get it back on the agenda. But the agenda information should be complete. It's probably, of all the warranties, the most important. And I say this because the conference was never meant to become a rubber stamp. It never was. If you look at the history of the conference, they use words like inspect the financials, inspect the office. I think that would make people freak out today. But there has to be a balance of power. And there has to be a clear balance that when it comes to things that need to be decided by the conference should be fair. Now, I'll also say this, and I'm on record about this, so it's nothing new from me. And I'm not anti-plain language big book. And if that makes you hate me, fine. But I'm just, for the purpose of this story, I'm not anti-plain language. I realize the reading level inside correctional facilities. But when I became a director and a trustee, I was told that between January or February and when the agenda comes out and the conference, that I'm not to lobby. I'm not to let delegates, area delegates, be the information channel to the groups in their area. If I happen to be at an assembly, I don't need to throw my 2 cents in, especially when they're talking about conference actions, because I have a vote. And I shouldn't be there as a trustee or a director to influence or to say, vote my way because I'm a trustee or a director. And listen, we can all say we would hope that people don't vote because they see someone else voting a certain way, but you all go to assemblies. You know what happens when certain people raise their hands or when certain people are in favor of it. Sometimes it looks unfair. So last year, what I totally disagreed with is the trustees doing weekly sessions for regions and groups and districts on the plain language big book. Now, some of them said they were asked to do that, but I was at PRASA when someone said from the microphone, if you'd like one of these presentations, this is my email and phone number. That, to me, is over the line. And I can tell you, honestly, I've had some discussions with current trustees and a lot of them agree. Maybe it was fear that the area delegates weren't getting the proper information back. But the bottom line is no lobbying either way, that we let the conference decide, and no conference member should have any further authority than another. So, warranty 4, all important decisions be reached by discussion, vote, and whenever possible, substantial unanimity. I would just say to everybody here, no pamphlet does a better job of explaining this than the AA group pamphlet about informed group conscience. I mean, that's really what it's saying. It says, here on one hand, we erect the safeguard against any hasty or overbearing authority or a simple majority. And on the other hand, we take notice of the rights and the frequent wisdom of minorities, however small. Because substantial unanimity to us is 2/3, not majority. It takes 2/3 to put a conference action in to be an advisory action. It goes on to say, and when a decision is taken in substantial unanimity does happen to be wrong, there can be no heated recrimination. Everybody will be able to say, we had a careful debate. We took the decision and it turned out to be a bad one. Better luck next time. Lots of AA decisions are changed all the time. We're the greatest self-correcting organization in the world, probably. The point is to have respectful discussion and debate. And this means put your phone down. This means no texting your service sponsor. If you need to text your service sponsor in a meeting that you've been elected to handle, you might want to think about letting someone else do the job. You and not your service sponsor are given the right of decision. It's your right of decision. If you want to talk to your service sponsor for 30 hours that week before you go, that's fine. I hope they're not telling you how to vote and instead are only talking about the underlying principles. But inside AA business meetings, we don't need to be texting people. And if you have something to say, go to the microphone. This is also a new trend in AA service. It's called, I go to the microphone too much, so I'm going to text someone else to go to the microphone so it's not me up there again. That's a new thing that's developed over the last couple of years. We don't need that either. We should be engaged. We should be not rolling our eyes. We should not be chanting. We should not be clapping if it goes our way. None of that should be going on in AA discussions or AA elections at all. It should just not happen. And it does sometimes, and that's too bad. People ask the question all the time, why does it say discussion, vote, and then substantial unanimity? Obviously, in most places, you have to make a motion in order to have discussion. Sometimes that limits talking about things. In some areas or the General Service Conference have a what's on your mind session. In other words, talk about something that's going on in AA, but you're not going to take any action on it. But when it comes to important decisions, they have to be discussion and vote and substantial unanimity. And respect for the minority opinion. And respect for not just calling the question because you gave your 2 cents and you don't want to listen to the 12 people who are online. And by the way, I'm just going to throw that out there. That's one thing the General Service Conference is better at than most areas and intergroups. If you speak once on a topic at the General Service Conference again, you don't get to go to that microphone until everybody else who has not gone gets to go. And there's no one at the microphone. Because there's nothing worse than I'm first at the microphone. I tell you why you should vote my way. And then I get back online to make a motion to call the question or table it. It's not fair. And I just want to say this, like the traditions, and I always say that we have to make sure that we're thinking about the newcomer in the room. You may know better, but the new person does not. So I don't know, if your speaker takes out a cross and holds it up, you and I know that's crazy, right? We don't do that in AA meetings, but the newcomer might not know that. But same for the new GSR. If the new GSR doesn't see that their input is welcome or that they get listened to like everyone else, they're not going to come back. They're going to think it's a waste of time. So it's super important that we conduct ourselves in a non-ugly fashion and just have a debate and discussion. Debate even freaks out some people in AA, but I mean, discussion, debate, call it what you want. And then we go and we deal by substantial unanimity and we hear the minority opinion. It's so important. It's a warranty. So warranty 5. No conference action should be ever personally punitive or an incitement to public controversy. It appears the last couple of years that we've never had more censures for the board sent in than the last 5 years, 6 years. And it appears that some board members are telling people that if you censure somebody, you are being punitive. I would say that's only possible if you have not read our literature. If you have read our literature, the 12 and 12, the 12 traditions, AA comes of age, and the concepts, if somebody is not doing their job, it is okay to tell them they're not doing their job. If someone is not showing up, we don't just let AA suffer. We remove the person and we get somebody else. Now, do we try to do it in a dignified way? Sure. The chairperson might call the secretary who's not showing up and say, you know what, it might be, you have a lot going on in your life. Maybe you should just resign. And it's nothing personal. Maybe you do it sometime in the future. There's tons of diplomatic ways like that to handle things. But simply, let's face it, the General Service Conference is not a legal authority. It's a spiritual body. So big deal, you got censured by a spiritual body. I have heard from the last conference that some trustees said that it would affect them professionally if the conference censured them. Way out things like that bother me when people say them. I'm going to tell you right now, I have a professional license in 21 states and have to fill out that renewal application every couple of years. There is no question on any professional license that says, were you censured by a spiritual body? Okay? None. It might say, were you disciplined by an administrative body? It might say, did you commit a crime? It might say, did any regulatory agency that oversees your business discipline you? Yeah, you got to check yes. But this thing that's being said out there, like I know that if I was currently an AA trustee and I have my license and I'm the chair of another board and I'm a member of another board and I'm an officer where I work, I don't need to report that to anybody. And a censure is just telling someone, don't do it again. We don't like that it happened. It's not reorganization. It's not removing people. I hope, I always say the difference between removing somebody and punitive, if someone refuses to step down but is not showing up and you remove them, that's not punitive. If you write a letter in the area newsletter about it or an article, area secretary thrown out for not doing their job, that's punitive. That's punishing. But taking care of AA is not punitive. And I'm not even saying that the trustees deserve to be censured this year. I was not there. I'm not privy to all that information. I just know that when I hear people saying we're going to wreck somebody's job or career, they just don't know what they're talking about. Or they're hoping that the audience is maybe doesn't work in the professional world like they do, and will just follow their lead. And that's too bad. A censure by the General Service Conference is not the board removing somebody. The board is a legal board. That's a legal action. But the conference censuring the trustees is just a spiritual suggestion that we don't like what you did. Incitement to public controversy. We stay away from public controversy. That's why we have the traditions. It's especially why we have tradition 10. You know, we don't take position. We don't take positions on outside issues. We don't fan the flames in the press or the media. We don't try to say, we don't try to get our way or to try to sway the world how they feel about alcohol or how they feel about alcoholics. All we do is say that if you're an alcoholic, we may be able to help you. We don't even guarantee we can help you. We may be able to. There are plenty of ways for people to stay sober besides Alcoholics Anonymous. But we don't stoke the public flames. We don't have narratives. You know, the rest of the world loves narratives and wants to see if they can position themselves within the public relations space to get their way. We don't do that. We want AA out of the public controversy. That's why the manuscript litigation bothered some people, because it was public. Court cases are public, and we started that court case. We can't help it when people sue us. People sue the General Service Board and AA World Services all the time. We have the person who gets beat up outside the clubhouse in a fight. We have the person who slips and falls on ice walking out of their meeting. They all think they can sue the General Service Board or AWS. When I was a trustee, there was even someone who sued us in federal court saying that AA had a satellite and was programming people from the space. Like, hey, they're entitled to it. But we can't stop when someone sues us. But when we sue someone else, we're in control of that. We started the manuscript litigation, and then it wound up in the paper. So, you know, we have to be careful. So I'm going to go to the next warranty, which is warranty 6. That though the conference may act for the service of Alcoholics Anonymous, it shall never perform any acts of government, and that like the Society of Alcoholics Anonymous, which it serves, the conference itself will always remain democratic in action and spirit. We don't do acts of government. You're an AA group if you say you are. We don't have any investigation committee. I know it says like it will be listed after 30 days so the delegate can confirm, but what's the delegate's job? The delegate's job is to confirm the address is right, the time is right, the GSO assign it to the right district in that area. We don't have a pontification purification committee. We don't. We don't go out and make sure, is it really AA? No, we let people vote with their feet. We let the traditions do that. We stay far away from that. And we don't have acts of government. We don't have rules about membership. We don't have rules about if you drink, can you come back? Because that's why we have the traditions. We used to have these acts of government. We had groups that said if you had a slip, you could come back. But if you had another slip, you couldn't come back for a year. Do you imagine that? But that's in writing in the archives. We just don't do that. The reason there's no acts of government is because we don't have a government. We have no centralized authority. Our authority is not on top. The higher you go, the lower you are in the level of authority on the upside down triangle. The General Service Board and the conference are not supposed to tell groups what to do, or districts or areas. Areas are not supposed to tell districts what to do. And districts are not supposed to tell groups what to do. Now, sure, can they share their experience? Of course. Of course they can. But do they get to regulate? No. And some think in today's AA, we've become too centralized. That it looks like the area is supposed to tell the districts what to do. But it's the opposite. You have to read the concepts and the traditions to know that. It says here, because we set such a high value on our liberties and cannot conceive a time when they will not need to be limited, we here specifically enjoin our General Service Conference to abstain completely from any and all acts of authoritative government which could in any wise curtail AA's freedom under God. The maintenance of these freedoms in our conference is a great and practical guarantee that the conference itself will always remain democratic in action and in spirit. Anything that's voted on at the conference is either about our literature, which is our literature, not the groups, not the districts, not the areas literature. It's AAWS's literature. Or suggestions in our literature on shared experience, how groups should operate, what a treasurer should do. But we definitely don't put out like government-like requirements. We just don't do it. It's because all weave throughout the concepts and the traditions is alcoholics are too susceptible to abusing power. That is a fact of life. We are very susceptible to abusing power and authority. And so we have to take that temptation away. And this is the warranty that guarantees that. You know, here's the perfect examples. When someone says, well, my service sponsor says that's not an AA event because it's not hosted by a district or an area. Well, you should get a new service sponsor. What would you like me to say? That is not what our AA literature says. The guidelines on conferences and roundups say anyone can host an AA event, a bunch of AAs together. But we have some areas and districts that feel like they're in the roundup, I don't know, inspection business. They should be deciding what really is AA and what's not AA. Or how about these people? Oh, no, it's a dance. Do not put it on the area website. Get rid of it. Well, I hate to break it to these people, but the first international convention had a dance, and so did the 23rd Street Clubhouse in New York City, and they had flyers. So people can say that all they want. We love to regulate official AA. We decided not to incorporate the name AA on purpose. It's like one of the first conference actions. I don't know why we think we need to be so like regulatory. If you don't like it, don't go to it. Now, if it really crosses a line, if you think it's harming other groups or AA as a whole, well, that's a different discussion. But just to regulate, we don't do that. Could you imagine if we did? But believe me, I know some areas and districts that do. They have like committees that vote on whether something can go on the area website. It drives me crazy. I want AA to only be on AA websites. But when we start like regulating the degree of how official the AA is, I don't know. I hear people say I hear people say this. You can't use the word conference. We only have one conference in Alcoholics Anonymous, the General Service Conference. I hate to break it to all those people, but there were AA conferences before the General Service Conference that used that word. So I don't know what to tell them. it seems we love to, we're just so susceptible to using power and authority. So with that, I'm going to get coffee quick and then go to questions. Please send them in to the chat. Okay, we are back. Let's see. There will be a new flyer coming out very quickly. Yes. Next question. The flyer will be on in the Facebook. Is it going to be posted in the chat? It's going to be posted in the chat very shortly. It'll also be in the Facebook group for the Monday night group. There's another question here. Do you think there would ever be a time when there would need to be a censure? Of course I do. I hope there's never need. But I care about AA more than anyone's ego, including my own. If the structure isn't handled properly, there's only two remedies in the service manual besides rotation. Okay? Rotation and death solve a lot of our problems. We all know that. Okay? Those two things. We also know that elections solve problems. But the only two real remedies for current trusted servants in the service manual are censure and reorganization. Reorganization meaning removing one or more trustees. How could it be punitive if Bill put it in there for us to do? And if censure is kind of like, I mean, we all know, it's kind of like a slap on the wrist, and we all know how well that works with alcoholics, right? I mean, I don't know how well it worked when other people slap you on the wrist, or if you have any alcoholic children or whatever else, but like, all it is a warning. All it is a warning. We don't like what happened. We'd like you to handle it differently in the future. Now, that doesn't mean that everything requires a censure. So as far as this year's censures, I wasn't there. I have no idea. It failed. I guess on its merits, I hope. I hope it didn't fail because people thought, because some trustees said that they would be in trouble at their jobs. Like I said, that just seems a little outlandish to me. But censure should not be the first thing we reach to. It just shouldn't. Now, I know that I'm an organization person, meaning I worry about the health of organizations just as much as the health of the individuals who are inside those organizations, as far as toxic culture. And so if we have censure after censure after censure coming, as an organizational person, all I can do is look at it and say, wow, why is this happening? Are the delegates being too mean, the area delegates? Or is there a culture on the board that is causing these censures to come in? I don't know, but I know this. If it was happening where I work and it becomes a pattern, I'm more worried about the pattern than I am the individual censure. So that's how I feel about all these. I'm not worried about the individual censures. I'm worried about the pattern of them all coming in the last 5 years, like what's going on. And, does the conference need to take another inventory like it did this year? Does the board need to take another inventory? Do we need to stop? Listen, I think anyone should be able to say anything they want. I am not against social media. I don't care if people share their experience, but I do have a problem with ugly comments on social media. I do have a problem with, I believe this when it comes to AA service. There is never a need for me to argue against your position. I just discuss my position, why I think a certain way. I don't need to ever attack why someone else thinks a certain way. Once you start going down that path, it's a bad path. Now, on the other hand, I want the trustees treated with respect. And, it's one of the parts of when people ask me, is this a concept question, Billy? Is this a warranty question? All this trouble we've been having? I actually say no, it's a tradition question. Because one of the things it says at the end of tradition 9, universal respect is the key to their usefulness. In other words, the groups and the areas should respect the trustees, but the trustees should respect the groups and the areas. If there is not universal respect for each other, our whole system collapses. And to me, that's kind of what has happened. It's not a concept problem, it's a tradition 9 problem, is somehow we do not have universal respect for each other. And I hope that we can return to that, because I've heard some comments about this year's conference, and you all know I'm not afraid. I'm not against people asking hard questions. I'm not afraid. I'm not against people voting one person in the minority. But when I hear about how ugly some things get, that disturbs me for sure. Concerning warranty 5, page C35, second to last paragraph. Privately, however, we can inform tradition violators that they are out of order. We can follow up by using such other resources of persuasion as we may have. Can you give an example or a time in your experience of the board when this was used? Well, I do want to stress when it says other resources of persuasion, we're talking AA here. We're not talking calling people names or gossiping about people or making ugly comments. When it says, I want to read the question carefully. Can you give an example or a time in your experience at the board when this was used? Tradition violators that they're out of order can be filed, but I mean, listen, I've had this when I was a board member and not a board member. If people call me and ask me a question, or if something comes to my attention, something came to my attention in the last couple of weeks, and I just sent a note to the delegate. And it's kind of one of the things that kills me in AA today, because an area trusted servant posted on their Instagram feed their letter to speak at the international convention. Now, that identifies that person as an AA member, even though the letter. So, the power of persuasion is to call somebody and share my experience, and hopefully they can share with that person. There's so many other instances like that. Not saying your last name when it's recorded. I know most of the people who speak all the time at AA conventions. And a lot of them grew up saying their last name from the podium. But I can find a nice, dignified way if I feel like it. I don't make everything my business, for sure. But we do have to make sure the power of persuasion should be positive and encouraging, never ugly and hateful, ever, 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 ever. Are there safety problems with having GSO registration information? How long do they keep and how long is it stored? Our district is asking for GSRs to get a group conscience on this action item. We are asked if GSO use, I don't understand about GSO using email only. With having GSO registration information, are you talking about the registration information for the international convention? Whoever asked that question, please clarify. Next question. At an intergroup meeting, I was told as by the chair that as a DCM, ACTCM, I am responsible for a group's listing to assure it is an Alcoholics Anonymous group. I heard you mention that an AA group is what they say they are. Can you go further in detail? Well, what are you assuring? What do they want you to assure? Are they three or more alcoholics gathered together for the purpose of staying sober with no other outside purpose? Okay. There's one question. That's it. Now, if you're like me and you're judgy and judgmental as can be, I don't like your meeting. I don't like your format. I don't like that you changed the blue card. I don't like your definition of an AA member. I mean, come on. That's what I'm saying. Is it two or three alcoholics gathered together for the purpose of sobriety with no other outside affiliation? If it is, it's AA. Now, if it happened to be an NA meeting, of course we want to know that because then it shouldn't be in the AA directory. Doesn't mean NA is bad. We list AA meetings and groups. That's what we list. What I find funny is that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if we started having a committee to investigate meetings, I just see so much trouble in that. And I think, is it an AA meeting? Is the address right? Is the location right? Is the time and date right? I think that's our business. I don't think anything else is our business. So the international convention. So I'm guessing this is a cybersecurity question. Is what I would tell you, and I'm sure this should not be a conference item. You should just write the general manager at GSO, whoever sent this in. Well, because you said your group is thinking about it. It's not a conference item. It's an office item. I can tell you that GSO, like any other organization, like, has anybody ever gone from the AAWS website to the Grapevine website? People raise their hand. Thank you. Do you know what happens when you do that? You get a big disclaimer. You are leaving AA World Services, going to another company, even though it's the Grapevine. I can tell you that the office takes cybersecurity very, very, it's a big concern. There are credit card information that's there. The whole world is concerned about cybersecurity today. But it's not a conference item. You should write a letter to the general manager, and I'm sure he will get back with a good answer. When does GSO take non-existing groups off the directory? That's a great question. It takes a lot to remove a group. It's a lot of coordination between the area registrar, the delegate, and the group services or registrar, group registration at GSO. But we are not quick to remove groups that no longer exist. In your experience, is there a path to restoring respect at the conference and in respectful view of trustees? Is it more information around service and the concepts? That's a great question, whoever asked it, but yes, Of course, I think there's a path. But I think it means that, I hate to say both sides, but if there are two sides or three sides, they all have to start taking the high road. And they all have to accept the group conscience. And, play fair and get along with others in the sandbox. And, let's put a lot of faith in the group conscience process. So maybe no more lobbying weekends by the trustees for a conference agenda item, Sometimes I think that caused more distrust than other things. Especially remember, at one of these events, they actually took a poll. We don't do polling in AA. That's not a group conscience. We don't do polling. At one of them, they went so far as to do a poll in the beginning and a poll in the end and said, "Oh, more people are in favor of it now. This thing must have worked." Like, we don't do that. So to the person who asked this question, I think 9 trustees just rotated. I think that's a good shot in the arm of rotation. It really is universal respect. And I've pled guilty to it. It's easy to go down the upside triangle of service and look at yourself in the mirror in the morning like I have, and be going off to an AAWS meeting and patting myself on the back and thinking, I know better than the AA groups. That's why they elected me. That's why I'm a director. It's a spiritual sickness that can invade every trusted servant. But you have to work really hard at not letting that invade, or when you see it crop up, dealing with it. And God forbid, bringing recovery to service. Like, that should never be like not in fashion. Bring your recovery to service. I saw something at a conference a long time ago, and it was a real good example. And this was at like a state convention, right? And on Saturday night, in the middle of August, the air conditioning went out in the hotel, the whole hotel. And you could only imagine, with the alcoholics checking out on Sunday morning, how they were to those front desk people, you know? And I remember somebody, the speaker, being at the podium and saying, I want to help everybody out in the audience today. I learned this somewhere. So we're going to make a chart, and we're going to list what we're resentful at and what did it affect and what was my part in it. What was my part? Where was I wrong? Like, if you're having a hard time with service, if you use inventory to solve other problems in your life, why aren't you using inventory in service? It's very easy to go down the rabbit hole and to forget to bring your recovery to service. But it is super important. And also to, if you're that bent out of shape, the best thing you can do is go to a whole bunch of crazy AA meetings. And not perfect AA meetings, the ones that people probably don't even want listed in the book, The ones that, like, except for like a jukebox and a keg, you think you're in a bar, right? But that's good old low bottom AA. And, remind yourself what we're doing here. The semicolons, the periods, the new paragraphs. Yes, they look nice. They have some level of importance, but they're not as important as putting out your hand and welcoming somebody to their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. They'll never even be close to that important. And so I am optimistic that we will have more that the last couple of years, which followed COVID, we've had a lot of challenges. I am super optimistic that we can go down the right path. So that is it. We will be back in 2 weeks. We will start with D. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Perfect. I can't post a flyer in the chat only because it's not set up in the mainframe to post,
Oh,
go.
okay.
But I could share screen if you want. So it's up to you. I could share
You can
screen.
share the screen. It's
Okay,
going to go up in the Monday night thing tonight. I think another question came in at the last minute. I don't want to.
perfect.
My area recently had an assembly. One of our officers was about to censure our area chair. However, was threatened and advised that they will be sued for violating warranty 5. To clarify, censure is a warning to avoid a repeating behavior, not a punishment. So I don't know where that took place, and I don't want to take sides. What I would hope is that, listen, if you go to censure somebody, maybe this is something I need to make clear. If you put your name on a motion to censure somebody and you write something not true about them on that motion, AA is not an immunity from you being protected from not being sued. You know, some of you might not know this, but a couple of years ago, a couple of lunatics decided to start a website called saveaa.org. And they started to attacking people publicly, including myself. I wasn't even on the board. I was like being blamed for being like the chairman of the Illuminati of Alcoholics Anonymous, responsible for the preamble, the plain language big book, God knows what else. But they went too far. They published my last name. I took legal action against them. That website is gone. So you can't go to an AA event and like harm someone's character. You don't get some AA freebie from the rest of the world. If you damage someone's character, you might be legally responsible. So I don't know the facts of this whole censure that just took place. I guess there was a vote somewhere at some assembly. All I should say is this. I believe in times like that, cooler heads have to prevail. And that's a time for leaders to step up and maybe get a couple of people in a room that don't want to be in a room together. And maybe get them to talk it out. Now, if there's behavior that's going on that's not okay, then the area needs to decide that. But I can't comment on those. I'm not there. I'm not in that area. I don't know the facts. I do know this, that I said it a couple of years ago. And I'm not taking a position on the General Service Board chair resigning or being asked to resign. We're long beyond that. But what I did say at the time is I hope it wasn't a rush to judgment, that enough time wasn't taken to deal with it, because it would start to appear in areas and districts. Well, if the board in one night can get rid of its chair, can I get rid of my chair at an assembly or my treasurer at an assembly? Like the first thing I would do if I was at an assembly where a motion like that was made would be to ask the person to retract it. And let's take 30 or 60 days to let a couple of people look into it before we start trying to take drastic action. I mean, the warranty said it tonight. Nobody loves hasty like an alcoholic, you know? Nobody. Like, we love the hasty decision, the immediate gratification. And that should be like the nuclear option. And you should have tried every possible other alternative. Now, if you're being bullied or picked on, I'm not saying that's okay. Sometimes those things need to be put out. Sometimes the only way to stop that is to not have it in the dark anymore, to shine a bright light on it. I'm not saying that that's not needed. Sometimes it is. I'm just saying to do it properly and carefully and take the right time. So we will be back in 2 weeks to talk about appointed committee members and non-trustee directors. I thank the person from this group who sent in a note after seeing those announcements. And then the week after. So that is July 14th, which is good because I'm having surgery next Monday on my arm because I fell and tore something. So I need to have a little surgery after the international convention. But I'll be fine by then, I'm sure. But I would suggest that you read the service manual section on appointed committee members and non-trustee directors. And I am even going to find an appointed committee member and a non-trustee director who have served in those positions and have them come that night and share 10 minutes about their experience in it. So that's it. We'll close with the responsibility statement. I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.